Oh, it's recording now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going to count down.
Sorry.
Hello, webheads. It's Preston Plord once again, or Silver Soul Gaming Preston, or just SSG Preston, whatever you want to call me. I am a Silver Soul Gaming affiliate and a member of the Rebel Gaming Club. That's basically the same introduction as last time. So this panel is going to be about racing simulations. A very niche genre in the video game industry, isn't it? Now, for those of you who probably misunderstand, this isn't racing games in general. This is going to be just about the realistic kind. So we're not going to talk about Mario Kart. We're not going to talk about Burnout or Need for Speed. Okay, maybe a little bit of Need for Speed, depending on which Need for Speed it is. But the point is, those arcadey type racing games, we're not going to cover those in this panel. So, if you remember, in the late 70s, early 80s, there were some racing games for the Atari 2600 and whatnot, like an IndyCar game, and then there was the mega popular Pole Position arcade cabinet from Namco. But those weren't really realistic per se because of things like the graphics and their processing power and the fact that the Atari, as far as I know, didn't have any steering wheel and pedal sets. But when personal computers started taking off, that's when developers realized they could make actual simulations of actual motorsports like Formula One, NASCAR, IndyCar. You get the idea. And one of the earliest, if not earliest, examples of sim racing comes from this 1980s ZX Spectrum game called Checkered Flag. Let me turn the camera around and we'll see a brief clip of a YouTuber named Spectrum Nostalgia play it. As you can see, very thin track selection, but they still have some real tracks, and that's a good thing. We're going to Brands Hatch, and the McFaster is McLaren, and Ferretti means Ferrari. I don't know what the Scion is. Yep, squeaking and blinking. That's what sim racing was like in the early days, people. As you see, it's properly simulating things like your fuel, temperature, what gear you're in, your lap time, your tachometer, your speed. Pole Position did not simulate fuel and temperature. It just simulated the gears, your speed, and of course, you hit a billboard, you're dead, son. Not the best game to play for epileptic. No offense to those who are epileptic, because there are a lot of flashing lights. And just like Pole Position, the laps count down from 3. All right, so you basically get the picture of that. That is one of the earliest attempts at sim racing, Checkered Flag for the ZX Spectrum or ZX Spectrum, depending on where you live. Now, that one didn't really simulate things like tire wear or pit stops. However, let me just put the camera down for a second. A few years later, a company called the Papyrus Design Group, they decided to make a simulation of one of the greatest events, if not the greatest event, in the entire spectrum of American motorsports, the Indianapolis 500. Just give me a second. I'll type in the name of said simulation in YouTube. Let me just rewind it. So, long story short, 1989, Papyrus Design Group, with a little bit of publishing help from Electronic Arts, came out with this. Indianapolis 500, the simulation. Let's skip the intro. Let's see. Now, as you see here, this only had one track, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. However, this actually simulated a real race weekend. You had a practice session, a qualifying session, and the actual race. Practice is just, need I say more? And qualifying, for those of you who don't understand it, you pull your car out of the pits and you do a couple of warm-up laps to see which lap is your faster one. And basically, the fastest qualifying time starts on the pole position, meaning the lead position, and the cars and the lap times behind are second, third. You get the idea. There's teams you can choose from. There's setup, which is your car setup. So you change everything from your tire pressure, your wings, all that stuff. All the stuff you could possibly tinker with regarding cars. This game simulated that. Only 3 teams to choose from. As you see, it's simulating drag. Then you have different tire options to choose from. It's showing you the pressure of said tires. Then you're tuning your gears, your cambers, shocks, wings, all that kind of IndyCar stuff. And here's the qualifying session. And for 1989, this is a really detailed, cockpit view showing the speed, the RPMs, temperature. It's not just a gauge for temperature anymore. In this game, it actually shows the number of degrees. In this case, it's like 215. That's pretty hot. Look at that speed, 236 miles an hour going into this corner. That is how fast an Indy car is, people. Like, it makes NASCAR stock cars look like karts in comparison. The mother game of Mario Kart. That is funny, Crystal, but I don't think Mario Kart had any influence from Indy 500, the simulation. And did you happen to catch the blinking oil light? Yes, this game simulated overheating oil as well. That's another step up from games like Checkered Flag and Revs. Yes, for a 1989 game, this is pretty wild, Crystal. Yes, you can indeed run out of fuel, which, of course, you don't want to do. This is the fourth and final qualifying lap, as you see by the white flag icon. This game also simulated cars retiring from the race from mechanical failures and whatnot. But as far as I know, you, the player, could not suffer from random mechanical failures like the AI drivers could. That's one way to finish the qualifying session, just deliberately crash and spin. Can you reverse? As far as I know, you can. All right. Is there a part in this video where there's an actual race going on? Oh. Okay, apparently this YouTube video doesn't show an actual race, but, oh, well, there's this video, but we're not going to watch the full 200 laps, and I'm not sure you'd want to. But as you see here, it's you against 32 other cars for up to 200 laps with caution flags and pit stops and retirements, just like the real Indy 500. For a 1989 racing game on the computers, that's pretty wild. And the AI drivers drive very smart and clean. They're not aggressive like you would see in games of today like Mario Kart or Burnout. After that, Papyrus would design additional IndyCar games, 2 of them to be exact, and the latter of which was renamed Kart Racing. Not kart as in go-karts, kart as in CART, Championship Auto Racing Teams. And then, in 1984, same company, Papyrus Design Group, they decided to tackle another form of racing. And this game would really take sim racing by storm. Now, IndyCar is not exactly, despite the Indy 500 being so popular and so prestigious, IndyCar racing is not typically the most popular motorsport in America. The one that pretty much is the most popular is, do you have your guesses in yet? Time's up. Grand Theft Auto. Oh my gosh, Crystal. It's NASCAR. My father can do a pretty spot-on impression of Ned Jarrett there. But anyway, impressions aside, in 1994, Papyrus Design Group went from open-wheel Indy cars to 3,500-pound NASCAR stock cars with NASCAR racing on MS-DOS. That was Windows before Windows was Windows. Now, this game, how to describe it? So, before this game, there was a game from Konami called Bill Elliott's NASCAR Challenge, but that wasn't nearly as much of a sim as this game was. Now, granted, in NASCAR Challenge, the only licensed driver was Bill Elliott, who drove the number 9 car back in the day when that game was made, which was 1991, I want to say. This game came out in 1994. And we're not going to watch a review of the game. Is there another video we can look up about this game? Yeah. Let's watch a brief one from a YouTuber called SquakeNet. No, we're not going to watch the intro again. But this one had multiple licensed drivers, a lot of them, although there were some omissions like Dale Earnhardt Sr. And there weren't a lot of tracks. Like there was no Daytona, there was no Indianapolis. But with the paint shop and all the other modding tools, the emerging sim racing community uploaded these files for download. So you could download Daytona, you could download Indianapolis, or any other sort of fantasy track. You could download a painted car of Dale Earnhardt or whoever else was missing from this game. And as you can see, the cockpit view much improved from Indy 500, the simulation. The numbers are a lot clearer. For those of you who don't follow motorsport, damaged engine, as I was saying. For those of you who don't follow the sport like I do, you might notice note that I'm calling these cars stock cars. That is what they are called, stock cars. I don't want to hear you use the term NASCARs to describe these cars. Thank you very much. As you see, unlike Indy 500 simulation, this properly simulated rolling starts. So instead of saying, in a rolling start, it's different from a standing start because instead of saying like 3, 2, 1, go, and there's a bunch of stoplights, a rolling start is basically the cars take a couple laps around the track to warm up their engines and tires. And then the safety car or pace car, whatever you want to call it, pulls down into the pits and the race begins. Let's fast forward a little bit. Oh, wow. This guy crashed on the pace lap and now he has a damaged wheel. Okay, I don't think SquakeNet is very experienced when it comes to NASCAR. Yeah, NASCAR stock cars handle very differently from Indy cars, and Papyrus Design Group clearly understood that. Like, these things don't have the best of downforce. They're about 3,500 pounds. So naturally, their handling is not really that great. All right, enough with the crashing. SquakeNet, you got to brush up on your skills, buddy. Let me check what time it is. 8:21? Wow, this flew by. So let me turn the camera around for a second. And since we have 10 minutes left, let's go over some of the newer games that are on the simulation racing market. There's titles like iRacing, which is basically a company buys the source code of NASCAR Racing 2003 season, the last hurrah from Papyrus Design Group, later named Papyrus Racing Games when they were acquired by Sierra, which is basically a massively multiplayer online racing simulator full of like NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One, midget cars, sprint cars, V8 supercars in Australia. It's a whole bunch of racing styles. And then there's R Factor 2, which is the sequel to the original R Factor, which is basically like the modders' playground for sim racing. Like, you can find mods in R Factor for just about any kind of racing imaginable, and you can even find some wacky stuff. Like, I believe I saw one for a mod of the world of a show called Naughty. Yes, you know that guy with the characters look like dolls, and the titular character has like a blue pointy hat. I saw Naughty Shop on PBS Kids back in the day, but anyway, there's also games like the Project Cars series from Slightly Mad Studios. I've heard Project Cars 3 was not really sim-oriented and tried to be like the somewhat arcadey Grid series from Codemasters. What else is there on the current market? There's Assetto Corsa and Assetto Corsa Competizione, the first of which is another modder's playground, although there's some things that rFactor 2 has that this game doesn't. And then Competizione is basically a GT3 simulator. That's really all there is to it. Now, as for gear, like you can technically use simulation racing games for with a regular controller like this or like a keyboard, but of course, if you really want to get into them, you're going to want a wheel and a set of pedals. I've used some good force feedback wheel and pedal kits in my time, and force feedback is more advanced than rumble because with force feedback, not only does the wheel rumble, but it gives you feedback as to like bumps in the road and all that kind of stuff. And at conventions like PAX East, I've used like Logitech G series. I've used the Thrustmaster series of wheels like the T300 RS and the TXSW Sparco. And I especially like the Thrustmaster wheels. Those things have incredible force feedback. Like if the wheel is not trying to break your wrists, then the wheel's not strong enough. I mean, you can tone down the strength if you're like me and you don't have the greatest of our body strength, but the feedback it gives you, it's pretty dang incredible. I mean, obviously I can't show you because I don't have that wheel. In fact, I don't have any force feedback wheel at the moment because of like budget and stuff like that. But the only force feedback wheel I've owned is the Microsoft Xbox 360 wireless force feedback racing wheel. I know that is a mouthful, but please bear with me. And I tested that with games like the Dirt series from Codemasters, and although not as good as the Thrustmaster ones, this 360 wheel did provide some pretty decent feedback. And there's also another brand that is usually recommended is Fanatec or Fanatec. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it. And here's some examples of wheels that Fanatec makes. And this is based on like a YouTube search. This is what their gear typically looks like. And they have a really cool ecosystem from what I've read on Fanatec.com. Interesting, what you say? All right, let's see. How much time do we have left? All right, we got about 4 minutes left in the panel, so that is pretty much how sim racing works. It's a bit expensive, especially if you're buying some really, really powerful equipment, like, as I mentioned, a really good force feedback wheel and pedal kit, especially if it's like a load cell brake. But from what I can gather, it's definitely worth every cent. If you want something different from your typical Mario Kart, Ridge Racer, Burnout, Need for Speed, or Grand Theft Auto, definitely check out the sim racing side of things. So, with the little time we have left, you got any questions or comments that I can respond to? Excuse me. Favorite sim racing game ever? Well, I would like to say rFactor 2, but I haven't played it yet, so I can't really comment on it. Although I really want to play into it, so I really want to play that one so bad. But One of my favorites ever is The Last Hurrah from Papyrus, that being NASCAR Racing 2003 season. I've spent a fair amount of time racing online in that game with some good friends and modding the heck out of it and playing some really wacky tracks. Like someone remade Rainbow Road from Mario Kart in NR 2003. It was absolutely beautiful. And what was your other question, Crystal? Let me check that out. How do people go around setting up sim racing on their devices? Well, the games can be owned both physically and digitally, if that's what you mean. And you can find like some of these programs, like iRacing and rFactor, they're only available on PC. But others like the Codemasters F1 games, Project Cars, those can be played on consoles as well. And don't forget the exclusive ones like Forza Motorsport. That's on Xbox and PC, although it's not really a hardcore sim. Neither is Gran Turismo, which is a PlayStation exclusive. But those are some of the popular choices on the market. And then if you don't have that great of one more thing, make sure you have a really good setup for these wheels and pedals. I don't recommend using them on just like on top of and under a computer desk, let alone a coffee table, especially if the wheel only uses like suction cups and not a clamp. And also like definitely make sure the pedals stay in place, because having to pause the game because the pedals keep sliding around your feet, some would say it's annoying, but that's definitely more polite than how I would say it. Yeah, but the point is you don't want that. Always make sure your wheel and pedals are secure in place. And if you want, get a nice fancy racing chair, like the ones from Playseat, like the Playseat Challenge. That's the portable one, and it still feels like a real race car seat. Yeah. But I'd say like a metal tray from some like Next Level Racing, along with a typical chair like this Respawn chair I'm in. I think those will do the trick too. All right, what time is it? Oh, it's 8:30. So that's about all the time I have, or we have, I should say. Thank you for watching, and thank you for supporting everything I do. Make sure to check me out on Linktree at SSG Preston. That's my email address, ssgpreston@gmail.com, if you want to get in touch with me via email. And of course, the Linktree thing has things like, Instagram and Twitter and all that jazz, including my YouTube, and also including my YouTube channel, which the soft reboot of that channel should be happening very soon. But that's a discussion for another time. So thank you, WebCon 2020, for watching once again. And hopefully we'll have some more mini sessions later on down the road. Maybe I'll be part of one. I don't know. We'll see. Thanks for watching.